The Tower of London. It's 2020, and this will be one of the most memorable years in the Tower's 1,000-year history.
Lower the drawbridge!
It's already seen more kings,
Richard III,
queens,
Anne Boleyn,
and famous events than anywhere else in Britain. Now, with exclusive access, we meet the remarkable people keeping the Tower alive during an extraordinary 12 months.
This is the historic moment that we're living in. It will never be like this again.
I ordered a washing machine. He said, we can't find the Tower of London. I said, the marauding peasants of 1381, they found it and they didn't have a sat-nav.
In this episode,
you just have to pinch yourself.
the 411th Yeoman Warder takes his place at the Tower.
Every little boy dreams of living in a castle. I say a castle because I'm from the north. I don't say a castle. I say a castle.
And we discover just how cruel King Henry VIII could be to his prisoners.
Conditions for poor prisoners were terrible. You wouldn't want to be here for very long.
And the Chief Yeoman Warder has an office clear-out.
Only a set of manacles.
It can only be the Tower of London. Couldn't happen anywhere else.
This is the Tower of London, up close and personal, in a year like no other.
Welcome to the Tower.
It's a warm July morning, and the Beefeaters are busy telling visitors gruesome tales of the kings and queens who met their fates inside the Tower.
Anne Boleyn actually lost her head at the top of this road.
The Yeoman Warders have been posted along a new one-way system, ready to answer all manner of questions from the public.
Obviously, tried to stuff the crown jewels down his trousers and make off.
Yeoman Warder Barry Stringer has been a Beefeater for just over a year.
First time here?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, we like that.
And he needs to make sure he remembers the Tower's 1,000-year history.
Seems like it's quite a nice turnout today, with all of our Yeoman Warders on post as well. I think they've got a good chance to pick our brains as much as possible, really.
All of the 37 Beefeaters need to have served for 22 years in the armed forces, and they all live inside the Tower walls. As well as being a royal palace and a safe house for the crown jewels, the Tower caters for an entire community, including Yeoman Warder Darren Hardy.
So if you think about it, we've got a doctor, a chaplain, a church, a pub, a village green. So we're a proper village, proper community.
Fabulous place to live.
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Oh, I just realised I didn't mention the torture chamber. Have you been to the torture chamber yet?
While the majority of Yeoman Warders have homes known as the casemates in the northwest part of the Tower, a handful of houses are situated around Tower Green, right in the heart of the fortress. Normally off-limits to the public, it's now part of the new tour route, and it's proving very popular with visitors. Yeoman Warder Terry Briggs lives in this coveted spot, which means he now finds himself working literally a stone's throw from his home.
Are they the living quarters for?
Yeah, that's Yeoman Warders. We live in. You see the blue doors?
Yes.
We live in them. So where the windows are open over there,
Yeah.
that's my flat. I live in that one over there.
So when it's time for a well-earned tea break, Terry has a short commute to put the kettle on.
Well, that's a nice warm day out there. Time for a cup of tea now.
Terry, a Royal Navy veteran of 32 years, has been living on Tower Green since 2019. His house overlooks the garden of Sir Walter Raleigh, the famous adventurer who brought potatoes and tobacco back to Britain. Unusually, Raleigh was allowed to look after a garden while he was imprisoned at the Tower.
This is where I've heard some funny stories when people come outside Raleigh's garden. This is where they get him confused, I think, with Drake or somebody else. I'm not sure who it is. The inner part of me wants to put my head out and say, you know, no, that's not right. I'm a massive people watcher. I love people watching, I really do. It's a nice thing to do. Interacting with them is lovely as well. So, and they get a nice wave off them. I quite like it. I see the people coming through. It doesn't affect me in any way, really. They don't stand outside and gawk through or anything like that. They're not noisy, they're just chattering. And when they see the Queen's house and the soldier down there, they're all impressed. And it's part of the history of the tower. This is part of what they've come to see.
Terry's bedroom looks out over Tower Green and some of the most famous buildings in the world.
I've got the White Tower, the chapel, Tower Green. Not many people can say that that's their view in the morning when they wake up looking at the Tower of London. I do feel very privileged.
There's only one disadvantage of being right in the middle of the tower.
When I'm in the bedroom, I do make sure that I have the curtains closed and that they don't see anything that they shouldn't be seeing. The real crown jewels are over the other side of the tower.
Coming up, the tower gets a new resident.
She's the new baby, so she gets lots of attention.
And the ravens are back, eyeing up the visitors.
I've got used to them over the years, but even now, I don't spend much time looking in a raven's eye, because you just never know.
The Tower of London has been home to some of the biggest names in history, but its most famous current residents have to be its 8 ravens. They bear a heavy responsibility. Legend says if they ever leave the tower, the kingdom would fall. Raven Master Chris Scaife has the job of caring for these icons.
Morning, you lot. Morning.
The tower lockdown means that the ravens haven't seen the public for almost 4 months. So Chris must settle them back into their routine, starting with breakfast.
There we go. Oh, that sounds like my bones, that does. So this morning, I'm feeding them a chick. They have 2 in the morning, and that will be enough for the day.
The other part of the routine is getting the ravens used to meeting people again. They were beginning to go native.
During the lockdown period, we was quite worried that they were starting to rewild themselves and that, but they've got really, really good memories and they remember things for life, so they can remember that the public were here 15, 16 weeks ago.
But the tourists' return has created an unexpected wrinkle in the birds' rehabilitation. For the first time, visitors are allowed into private areas only used by tower staff and by ravens.
What we've managed to do is open up Tower Green. The public can actually walk past the houses, but it does mean that they're walking slightly into the ravens' territory.
Without realising it, visitors are now wandering straight into the living room of these very territorial birds.
90% of the people that come into the Tower of London have probably never seen a raven before. They're quite awesome to stand next to. I mean, even now, I don't spend much time looking in a raven's eye. I mean, they've got used to me and I've got used to them over the years, but I don't ever stare them out, look in their eye, because you just never know.
Darren Hardy is the Beefeaters' newest recruit. After 23 years in the band of the Coldstream Guards, he joined the tower in October 2019 as the 411th yeoman warder.
It takes a full day to get around here. Yeah.
It's been lovely.
Yeah. You just have to pinch yourself. What, every little boy dreams of living in a castle. I say castle because I'm from the north. I don't say castle. I say castle. In the northeast, we've got more castles than anybody, so it's a castle. So a little boy dreams of living in a castle. We get to live here.
As a rookie, Darren hasn't spent that much time talking to visitors.
Being the sort of newest member of the human body, it still feels like I'm still trying to get my feet under the table.
And it can sometimes be tricky when you're put on the spot.
We get lots of questions. There's lots of questions on the Tudors. You got to think about it, there's like 1,000 years of history here. That's a lot of history. It's very easy sometimes for the brain just to go gunk. And what's the date? What's the date? When is that again?
Especially when it's a tough crowd.
How many wives did Henry VIII have?
So we've got Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, we have Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves. We have his, what was called his fifth wife again? Catherine Howard, and then Catherine Parr, so 6. And there's a rhyme. Do you know about the rhyme? Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. You weren't a lucky lady if you married him. Wasn't a good choice. Sometimes you're really, really quick and you're swift and you know the answer, and other times it's like, all right, hold on a minute, who was that again? No. So I don't think there's a single yeoman warder here who doesn't have the odd brain block every now and then.
Exactly 500 years ago, King Henry VIII was married to his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. He was so in love with Catherine that he had his armour engraved with her initials and the Chapel Royal of St. Peter ad Vincula built at the Tower. It's said that Henry had the chapel ceiling made out of Spanish chestnut, so Catherine could pray beneath the trees of her homeland. It is the only building in the country to contain the remains of 3 Tudor queens: Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen, and 2 of Henry's 6 wives, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard. They are all buried here. Yeoman Warder Matt Prime is the chapel clerk.
Although the tower here has had a working chapel, this chapel, for over 500 years, it's certainly not a museum piece. It's not a dusty old building with just some relics in. This is still the hub of the Tower community today.
The chapel is famous for its Tudor royalty, but it also plays an important part in the lives of the yeoman warders and their families today.
We have christenings, lots of yeoman warders and grandchildren are christened here, and we have yeoman warders' weddings. In fact, next year I'm having my own wedding here. I've just got engaged to Jo, my fiancée, and it'd be a real honour to be married here.
In one part of the chapel, there's something tourists hardly ever notice, but it means everything to the beefeaters. It's a memorial roll bearing the names of all the yeoman warders since the Duke of Wellington became Constable of the Tower in 1826. New yeoman warder Darren Hardy has come to see Matt to find out more about it.
So here we have the yeoman warder memorial roll.
The dates, they're not in order, are they?
They're not in order at all, no. Very unusually,
yeah.
They're the dates of what we call embodiment, which is the date you become a yeoman warder. So they start there in 1827 and they finish there in 1981. So a lot of the public will say, well, how come no one's died since 1981? But these are the dates that you became a yeoman warder.
Right.
A yeoman warder's name and start date is only added to the board after his or her death.
So when I die, something I know that I will actually manage is to get my name on this board.
Yeah.
And it will say 2013, which is the date that I became a yeoman warder.
Right.
And you'll be on there and your date will be?
2019.
Yeah. So it's something that we can both achieve to be on that board.
But not too soon.
Not too soon, hopefully.
The Duke of Wellington was the Constable of the Tower. He was the man responsible for bringing discipline to the yeoman body, insisting it must only be made up of retired servicemen. And in 1827, he started the official numbering system of the yeoman warders, which is still in use today.
Of course, what everyone's interested in, number 1.
Yeah.
1827, John May. He was a Sergeant Major from the Grenadier Guards, fought at Waterloo.
Wow.
And when the Duke of Wellington decided to get rid of all the crooks and bring in meritorious Sergeant Majors, he was the first one.
Yeah.
So I'm 397, you're
411.
And there's number 1. Bring the public here and maybe talk about him sometimes and just keep his name alive.
Yeah. You know, as the newest yeoman warder, it's quite a strange feeling, actually, to know that your name's going to go on a board and you're no longer here.
Yep, you'll be part of history in 100 years' time. 2 yeoman warders will be standing here talking about this board and they might mention your name.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Although Henry VIII redesigned the Chapel Royal and attended religious services there, he is now mainly remembered for his brutality and cruelty. He sent more people to their deaths than any other monarch. Anyone who crossed him, nobles, ministers, churchmen, or even his own wives, would find themselves on their way to the execution block. One prisoner who experienced Henry's cruel rule was notorious conwoman Alice Tankerville. Historic Royal Palace's chief curator Tracy Borman is investigating how she became one of the most famous female prisoners in the Tower's long history.
Alice Tankerville wasn't noble, she was just a poor woman. We actually don't know that much about her, but she was probably a native Londoner. And she had a common-law husband named John Wolfe, who was a dock worker from Germany.
In 1533, 24 years into Henry's reign, Alice and her husband, John Wolfe, hatched a plan to rob two wealthy foreign merchants.
Alice was known for her charm. There's even some suggestion she may have been a prostitute. Certainly, there was something about her that was very attractive to men. Alice used her charms to lure the two merchants on a boating trip. When they reached a secluded part of the river known as the Turning Tree, her husband John, who'd been hiding on board the boat, suddenly leapt out and stabbed the two men to death. The couple then stripped their bodies of money and jewels and threw them overboard.
John Wolfe and Alice Tankerville had committed a brutal murder. If they were caught, the Tower awaited. Their fate would be horrendous. It's 5:30 p.m. and the Tower is ushering out the last of its guests.
You had a good visit?
Yes, thank you.
Enjoy the sunshine.
Yeoman warder Chris Clawson can head back home, take off his uniform and catch up with his daughter Megan, and the Tower's newest resident.
She is the latest dog in the Tower, and she's a 7-month-old cotton noodle puppy.
Megan's always wanted a dog ever since she could talk. We couldn't have one at home. So when she came to move in with me here at the Tower, that we could get a puppy. Being the loving father, I dutifully went out and asked the Deputy Governor if we could have permission to have a dog, knowing it would take years. It backfired immensely. 1 month later, I got an email saying, Chris, you're more than welcome to bring a new dog into the Tower, and here's Ethel. Ethel's a big bundle of energy, so it's time to take her for a walk and try and tire her out.
Only Tower staff are allowed into the 700-year-old moat. Now drained of water, it's gone from being a formidable defensive feature to the most exclusive space for walkies in the capital.
It's the best place in London to have a dog because we've got all of this in just our back garden. There is nothing that she won't go and sniff or chase. Birds, the lawnmower. She's so interested in people and other dogs that she's in her element.
Ethel is the most recent incarnation of a Tower tradition going back centuries. Anne Boleyn had a dog called Porcoy, while King Charles II's favourite breed of spaniel is still around today.
Well, there's a big community of dogs here in the Tower, and Ethel's the new kid on the block. We didn't know how Ethel would fit. She's really bouncy, and a lot of the dogs here are sort of getting on a little bit now. But she's got a couple of best friends, Yeoman warder Matt Prime's dogs, Pip and Duke. They look very similar to Ethel, so I think they get along really well. A lot of the dogs chase her because she's so fast. She's now part of the family, part of the doggy family. So I've had to get used to a whole new routine since Ethel arrived. It's getting up earlier, not just thinking about myself anymore. She's the new baby, so she gets lots of attention. Wow. In a lot of ways, we no longer exist. Only Ethel exists in our house now.
Almost 500 years ago, conwoman Alice Tankerville and her murderous husband, John Wolfe, robbed and killed two wealthy merchants. Eventually, the pair were caught. They were condemned to death by Henry VIII and thrown in the Tower. Chief Curator Tracy Borman is researching Alice's story. at the ruins of the Cold Harbour Tower where she was imprisoned.
Conditions for poor prisoners were terrible. They would be kept in cold, dark, unsanitary cells. Many fell victim to jail fever or other disease. Really, you wouldn't want to be here for very long.
Alice had no intention of staying locked in the tower, so she hatched a plan. She had befriended John Board, who was a servant to the tower's boss. He became besotted with Alice and, despite the risks, offered to help her escape. On the night of the 23rd of March, 1534, they put their scheme into action.
Board provided Alice with everything she needed to escape, including 2 ropes, a key to the outer door, and some men's clothing.
But you couldn't simply stroll out of the Tower of London.
Alice managed to pick the lock of her cell. She then used the borrowed key to open the outer door, and evading her guards, she escaped up to the roof of the Cold Harbour Tower, ran all the way across to the roof of St Thomas's Tower and over Traitor's Gate. Even the thought of escaping from the Tower of London is heart-thumping stuff. It's pitch black, there are guards everywhere. You could plunge to your death from one of the high walls. So you might think, why even try? Well, for Alice, if she'd stayed here, it was certain death, so it was worth the risk.
Alice and John Board used their ropes to climb down the wall onto the wharf where a small boat was waiting on the Thames. From the tower, they paddled along the river, getting back on the bank not far from where Tower Bridge is now. They slowly made their way up Tower Hill towards a safe house. With Alice now dressed as a man, it looked like they'd made it.
Well, they almost got away with it, but unfortunately they encountered some guards who instantly recognised Board. Alice's disguise failed. It was obvious she was a woman. And after that daring escape, they were seized and brought straight back to the tower.
Coming up, Alice Tankerville receives a horrendous punishment from the tower.
She was kept under 24-hour guard, chained to the walls. I mean, it's obvious they're taking no chances whatsoever.
And the new yeoman warders find their own way to celebrate a special tower anniversary.
We never played at the Chapel. The Chapel Royal is it'd be quite a privilege, I think, to play here.
It's 10 a.m. and visitors are enjoying the tower. Yeoman warder Barry Stringer's already hard at work.
So many people come here and they want to hear the gruesome, scary stories about the Tower of London.
By far the most popular topic is the cruelty of King Henry VIII.
Most of the time people are asking, you know, how did Henry VIII have 2 of his wives executed here? And they want to know a little bit more about Anne Boleyn and how her execution took place. She got down kneeling and praying, and then he had the sword ready behind her and said, "Bring me my sword." And as he said that, Queen Anne Boleyn just lifted her head just a little bit, and he could then get a clean sweep and take her head off.
It's quite dark that we're kind of like also intrigued and fascinated by it all.
We love all that, don't we?
Yeah, yeah.
A grisly reminder of the tower's darker days is kept in the exclusive Yeoman Warders Club, the Keys. This is where yeoman jailer Jim Duncan stores his iconic jailer's axe. Unsurprisingly, the Keys is not open to the public.
And let me tell you something really special. So we'll just open up and you can have a look at the old girl. And I think that that's a thing of beauty. That's the actual badge of office for the yeoman jailer. Just think about it. It is, well, it's a weapon of war, and it was also a functional object, and that was used in executions.
Jim can trace his job back more than 4 centuries. It's one of the oldest positions at the tower. The first recorded person to carry the axe was Lawrence Wainwright. In the 1570s, he was the tower's master jailer, one of the old names for yeoman jailer. Beheadings were carried out by an executioner, but the yeoman jailer would be standing by.
If that execution, for some reason, went wrong, then it was always the yeoman jailer's job to give the coup de grace and finish that unnecessary task that needed to be done.
Thankfully, the jailer's job description today is a little less gory. Part of it involves scheduling the duties of the 37 yeoman warders who protect the crown jewels.
I am the 49th yeoman jailer. There have been more men in space than are doing the job that I hold today. Why wouldn't you want to carry that axe? That is a badge of office that no one in the world has. And it's always been an ambition of mine to do the oldest running job here in the Tower. You could say, end of story, for a little boy whose dream has finally come true.
Back in 1534, the Tower under King Henry VIII was a terrifying place. It had a dire reputation as an infamous prison, locking up people from all walks of society, from queens to common criminals. One unfortunate inmate was conwoman Alice Tankerville. She and her husband John Wolfe had been condemned to death at the Tower for murdering and robbing 2 merchants. A femme fatale, Alice had used her charms to persuade a Tower servant, John Board, to help her escape. But John Board and Alice were caught.
After their capture, Alice was brought back to the Tower, thrown into her old cell in the Cold Harbour Tower.
Her treatment for attempting to break out of prison was brutal.
She was kept under 24-hour guard, chained to the walls. I mean, it's obvious they're taking no chances whatsoever. There will be no second escape.
Her accomplice, the servant John Board, got a far worse punishment from his boss, the lieutenant of the Tower. Board was kept in a notorious torture cell in the depths of the White Tower, known as Little Ease. Just 4 feet square, its cramped measurements meant it wasn't possible to stand, sit, or lie down. And the cell itself was in permanent darkness. The prisoner would be forced to crouch in there alone for days or even a week before being put on the rack.
While Board was being interrogated and tortured, he was asked why on earth he'd helped Alice escape. And his response just breaks my heart. He said that it was for the love and affection I bear to her. And even though Board had helped a notorious murderess escape from the Tower, I think you've got to feel sorry for him, because clearly he was a man deeply in love.
John Board was eventually hanged from the Tower walls, as an example to anyone who dared break the Tower rules. As for Alice and her husband, John Wolfe, they were marched through London along the river and hanged from a specially built gallows, constructed on the spot where they had murdered the 2 merchants.
It's tempting to see Alice as a kind of scarlet woman who lured men to their deaths. Well, yes, she had committed murder, but in the 1500s, women were very much seen as the weaker sex, and Alice had fought against that. She was trying to carve her own fate out. And also, I think she deserves some respect for being the only woman to ever escape from the Tower.
After one of the most difficult periods in the Tower's history, visitor numbers have been rising. It's good news for the Tower's governor, Brigadier Andrew Jackson.
When we first opened, we had a trickle of visitors. That's gradually increased. We've probably got around 1,000 people have booked a slot to come to see us today. So it's good. It's been a year like no other, completely outside the experience of anybody who's worked at the Tower, and indeed any of our visitors.
Many Tower events have had to be called off.
We were due to have some really important visits over the summer, which have been put on hold and cancelled. One of the things we were looking forward to this year was celebrating the 500th anniversary of the chapel of St Peter ad Vincula, which has just been cancelled.
The cancellation of the chapel anniversary has given yeoman warders Barry and Darren an idea.
Oh, never been in here before.
Well, me neither.
Another new part of the chapel.
In a side room, they hatch a plan.
This is the 500th anniversary of the Chapel Royal of St Peter ad Vincula this year. Sadly, all of the celebrations have had to be postponed, which I think is a real shame. It's so sad. So Darren and I put our heads together and we've decided to play a particular piece of music here at the chapel. Hopefully it's appropriate.
Yeah, I think it'll sort of fit with the period. It's a well-known piece. Myself and Barry in our former lives were musicians, and then we played together on the Albert Hall in front of the royal family and thousands of people. And this is slightly different, a little bit nerve-wracking because even though it's a sort of smaller audience congregation, it's everybody we really, really know. But we're really looking forward to it, aren't we? You know.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And we've never played at the chapel. The Chapel Royal is it'll be quite a privilege, I think, to play here.
When they move into the tower, rookie yeoman warders are given lodgings in the casemates while they learn the centuries of tower history they'll need for visitor tours. It's known as the story, and it's a daunting amount of information that normally takes 6 months to learn.
Myself and Barry started within a few months of each other. Barry started first, and I was a few months later, and then we ended up lodging together. Yeah. In the casemates, didn't we?
Yeah.
But it was really helpful, yourself being a few months ahead of me, because that was an advantage to me, because I could sort of, ask you the questions because you'd already been there, And it was really, really useful.
It was fantastic, the fact that we could bounce off each other.
We treat the story like a piece of music, but if we got a word wrong, it was like a wrong note, which was really frustrating. But you were very sympathetic, all the wrong words.
And then also,
really helpful.
We were sharing the same place, and he's a fantastic cook, so thank you, brilliant. And I was a pot washer, it was really good. And it worked.
Although they've performed in top venues, it's been a long time since they've played together.
We haven't performed together for about 6 years, I'd imagine, last time at the Festival of Remembrance. So to do it here in a very intimate setting will be awesome.
Shall we brush away the cobwebs?
Well, it's been a while since I played this, and that's wrong, isn't it? It should be like that, really, shouldn't it? Let's have a go. Shall we have a quick tune first?
Yeah? You in here?
While Barry and Darren practice their piece, outside near Tower Green, yeoman warder Chris Clawson is following his own artistic pursuits.
I've always had a bit of a thing that I wish I could paint. You walk into every yeoman warder's house, there's pictures of the tower all over the place. We've all got paintings of the tower from different angles and different positions and different parts of the tower. So I thought, well, why buy another painting of the tower? Why not try and make one myself? And you never know. When I'm long gone, maybe somebody will be buying a Chris Clawson original in the future. You never know. I decided very quickly from a few of my earlier pictures that doing whole buildings wasn't my thing. So what I tend to do now is I tend to pick just parts of buildings and little bits that I find interesting. So at the minute, I'm doing one of the onions on top of the White Tower because I love the weather vane, the colours when they pop out, no matter what the weather's like. I know it's a sunny day today, but the weather vanes always shine out at you, so I thought I'll try give that a go. It's my favourite part of the tower to paint, turrets on the White Tower. But I've also done the clock, the bell tower. I've done the lamppost just over there, which was my first ever attempt, which is absolutely horrendous. So that's one to keep in my private collection. It's just amazing what little bits and pieces you pick out. I didn't even know the planters, which I love outside the Queen's House, are embossed with the Plumbers Guild from the city. They were donated to the tower. And of course, the oldest sash window in London, which is up above the cowshed. All little bits and pieces I'd never have noticed. It's just layer upon layer upon layer of history, really. And I now get to notice it, which I didn't do before. I think by doing my painting now, I've started to look at the tower again, fall back in love with the tower. It makes it more special. It's almost like you're beginning a love affair. I'm falling back in love with the tower.
Chris is the 407th yeoman warder to join the tower. The Beefeater's numbering system has given his signature a unique flourish.
I thought long and hard, before I could even paint, I thought, well, how do I sign them? So at the moment, I just put my Yeoman Warder number on them. So all my pictures that are mine have got 407 on.
Over at the Bywood Tower, Chris's boss, Chief Yeoman Warder Pete McGowan, is hard at work.
Well, here we have it, the Chief and Jailer's office. Beautiful building, dates back to the 1280s. Absolutely love it.
Pete's headquarters hadn't had a revamp since the 1970s and definitely needed smartening up.
It was made up of bits of kit from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and all sorts of things all over the place.
But modernisation means something different at the tower.
We wanted to bring it back to the 12th century, so when people came in here, there was a better feeling. Redone the chairs. A nice bit of leather there, designed by my own hands, with the Tudor rose on there. So they've got somewhere to sit, and we can have meetings with them, and we have a lot of guests in here. There's a lot of resident kids come in here because they know we've got biscuits on that table. Even the dogs of the tower come in here because they know exactly where the biscuits are.
Pete is one of only 5 Royal Air Force Yeoman Warders at the tower. The makeover's given him the perfect opportunity to add a few personal touches.
People buy me things from my old regiment. That was our 70th anniversary of the RAF regiment there, and that stays there. I drink out of that, and someone came in a couple of weeks ago and gave me this challenge coin, which is also Royal Air Force Regiment, bless them.
His RAF career has also influenced the choice of colour in the jailer's office. Air Force Blue.
And I do get my colleagues coming in here during the day, to have a chat or even rob a biscuit. But they do get surrounded by blue, with the blue carpet and the blue chairs and the blue desks, sticking with the Air Force colours. Whilst I'm the chief, it's this colour here. Goes with my eyes.
Any refurbishment at the tower wouldn't be complete without a surprise discovery, and Pete's turned up a good one.
Only a set of manacles. They had to pull some floorboards up in a little cubbyhole next door, and we found these. It can only be the Tower of London. Couldn't happen anywhere else. We haven't used them yet, but there's always a possibility. If anyone gets out of line, we can put them in these and really test them out.
Coming up, the chapel has a special anniversary performance.
What a beautiful, beautiful piece of music. I just feel like a proud mum, because that's my colleagues.
And Chief Yeoman Warder Pete reflects on a year like no other.
Even coming up to the Crown Jewels, I'm chuffed to bits to see a queue. I didn't know when these days would come back.
It's the end of July.
Hello there, how are you?
And in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, a special event is about to take place. King Henry VIII built the Chapel Royal exactly 500 years ago. So to mark that, a small group of Beefeaters and their families have decided to have their own private commemoration.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all here today on this fabulous day with the sunshine outside. And welcome to the Chapel Royal of St. Peter ad Vincula. It's our 500th anniversary this year. However, we thought it was really, really important that we mark the occasion in some way. And we're going to be doing that today. Yeoman Warder Barry Stringer and Yeoman Warder Darren Hardy. They're going to be playing a piece. It's called Greensleeve, and it's believed to be composed by Henry VIII himself. When you're ready, chaps.
As the music rings out through this ancient building that's seen so much history, it's a fitting time for Chief Yeoman Warder Pete McGowan to look back on a year like no other at the Tower.
2020 to date has been like the most weirdest year ever. We started off great at the beginning of the year. We had Prince Charles come here, we had a fantastic day. And then we had, lockdown. There's a few lows through there, you know, putting the guys on furlough. Even down to my wife, you know, becoming very ill with the coronavirus. But she fought her way out of that. Always protecting the tower, always doing our ceremonies that we're supposed to do, our locking up at night. And then suddenly it happens, you know, we had that great news, you know, the 10th of July, we're going to lower the drawbridge.
Lower the drawbridge! Lower the drawbridge!
We had the trumpeters and all the rest of it. It was fantastic. We were thinking, we now need visitors. We ended up getting it all together, the sanitising gel and the ropes and all the rest of it, and routes and one-way systems, and we have days like this starting to appear now. We're now in a happy place.
Wow, what an absolute privilege that was. What a beautiful, beautiful piece of music. I just feel like a proud mum, because that's my colleagues.
The sound inside is amazing. It really, really was good. So I'm going to have Greensleeves in my head for the rest of the day now, so I'm going to be going around humming and singing Greensleeves. But what an honour, brilliant.
As the day reaches its peak, Chief Yeoman Warder Pete takes a last stroll around the grounds to check on the tower's recovery.
This is probably the busiest I've seen it. Really excited. It's just looking like it used to. Obviously, we've got a few more thousand to go, but even at what we're looking at, around 2,500, 3,000, it's looking really, really good. Really good. Even coming up to the crown jewels, I'm chuffed to bits to see a queue. I didn't know when these days would come back. I feel quite confident now. The troops feel it, all my yeoman warders feel it. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hi, Chief. Busy.
You feel a bit of a buzz around the place now?
I tell you what, this is the first day since it opened that it feels back to old times. I'm enjoying it, actually.
If you put them crown jewels on, make sure you put them back.
And you're the chief?
Yeah, and where have you come from? Very far? Oh, London, great to see neighbours. The part that our locals are playing is absolutely amazing. The support is phenomenal. Really happy what I've seen walking around today, you know. I say we've been through the bad times. Really proud of all the guys that work and live here. We are the storytellers at the Tower of London. We've got 1,000 years of history that we love telling people about. And I can honestly say, Anne and I, we're ready to do another 1,000 years of history. We're not there yet. But, you know, there's always plenty of work to be done. And I've got a lot of work to do this afternoon. However, there's always time for a cup of tea, and that's where I'm going now.
Brand new next Wednesday at 8, Michael Burke reveals the hidden stories and events that changed the course of history and how Britain won World War II. Next night, also brand new.
This is the Tower of London, up close and personal, in a year like no other.
Welcome to the Tower.
It's a warm July morning, and the Beefeaters are busy telling visitors gruesome tales of the kings and queens who met their fates inside the tower.
Anne Boleyn actually lost her head at the top of this road.
The yeoman warders have been posted along a new one-way system, ready to answer all manner of questions from the public.
Obviously, tried to stuff the crown jewels down his trousers and make off.
Yeoman warder Barry Stringer has been a Beefeater for just over a year.
First time here?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, we like that.
And he needs to make sure he remembers the tower's 1,000-year history.
Seems like it's quite a nice turnout today, with all of our yeoman warders on post as well. I think they've got a good chance to pick our brains as much as possible, really.
All of the 37 Beefeaters need to have served for 22 years in the armed forces, and they all live inside the tower walls. As well as being a royal palace and a safe house for the crown jewels, the tower caters for an entire community, including yeoman warder Darren Hardy.
So if you think about it, we've got a doctor, a chaplain, a church, a pub, a village green. So we're a proper village, proper community.
Fabulous place to live.
Yeah.